It's live on the internet, Jupiter at night. Before an audience, Jupiter at night is live on the internet.
This episode of Jupiter at Night is brought to you by FreshBooks.com. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Jupiter at Night. My name is Chris.
I'm Jeremy.
Hey there, J-Man.
Hi.
I'm excited because tonight's episode is sort of the conclusion of a three-part arc. Now, if you haven't been following along at home, today we've traveled and landed at Mars. Over the last few successive Wednesdays, we've been bouncing from one topic to the next that's led us here. And just a quick recap.
We started with like space flight on different
in our episode
forms of space flight.
To Boldly Go, J-Man, where we covered the different types of engine propulsion. And then we thought, okay, well, now that you know what engines you can use, we should talk about the specific challenges of traveling to Mars.
Well, and actually long-term space travel in general, gravity and body mass, and
radiation effects,
all that weird stuff.
And all that kind of junk that would get you to Mars. And so then we ended that episode at Mars. And we're going to, in just a moment, we're going to bring our resident space expert on, Heather, and we're going to talk about, now that we've gotten to Mars, what the heck do we do with ourselves? And what challenges face us lying ahead?
And how do we overcome them?
Exactly. But J-Man, before we jump to that, I want to give a holler over to our buddies at FreshBooks.com.
Can I interrupt you before you get into your fancy schmancy ad read for these guys?
Sure,
because I want to tell you that after last night, when we first introduced these guys as our new sponsor, I went home and told my dad about it.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I mentioned him last night. He's a construction worker.
Yeah.
You know, a private contractor.
Yeah.
So I told him all about this, and he actually was like, my dad doesn't get excited. He was actually excited. He was like, really? They'll do that? And it's free?
Yeah, well, that's what I said when Ann was showing it to me, and we were going to start using it. I was like, what, really? It can do that?
Yeah.
What specifically did your dad like about it?
Invoicing. You know, he still uses one of those things that you like buy the book from the hardware store, and he handwrites everything.
Where it has like the hardware store logo.
And God, his handwriting is terrible.
Yeah,
like he's had people call him up and say, "What are you charging me for?"
I've seen contractors give me those for bids. Yeah.
So now he with this, I mean, to start with, it's free. So the first few guys, he can actually type out really nice invoices that look professional.
Yeah, really, like with a few quick minutes, you can go up there and upload your own logos, and it makes you a really slick looking, professional looking template. Yeah. So, before we go to Mars, I should say, check out FreshBooks.com because you can sign up for a free account, which is awesome. And when you are signing up, there's a little box in it that says, "How did you hear about us?" Well, enter the promo Jupiter. And what it does is it gets you in a competition, or a contest for you ready for this?
Yeah.
A free cake.
Cake?
Yep. FreshBooks is giving away a free cake to one of our listeners each week in the month of April.
If you don't like cake, well, first of all, there's something wrong with you, but you can send us your cake if you win it.
Yeah, that's true.
You can.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that.
Yeah.
Just go ahead and send it to us.
Yeah.
So check out FreshBooks.com, and when you sign up, tell them you heard about us. Use Jupiter as the phrase and get your free account. And then I'd love to hear if you tried it out. I am a contractor who invoices a lot, and I have loved this solution.
Maybe I'll give you guys an ongoing story of my father's use.
I'd be really curious to hear how it goes.
Yeah. An old non-techie dude using this stuff.
Now let's jump over to Mars. Mars Base, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Oh, no, thank you for joining us. Now, okay, where we left off was we'd just gotten to Mars, and I thought would be a perfect opportunity to talk about some of those challenges I think we'd immediately hit, and some of the interesting little tidbits that I think people might not realize about Mars.
Yeah.
Let's go from there.
Alrighty.
Well, one of the big challenges of getting there or living there is, I mean, we have to worry about the atmosphere because there's barely any. We have to worry about the gravity because there's barely any.
Yeah.
We have to worry about a whole list of other
and some of those things have like repercussions, like because of the fact that there's not much atmosphere, that it's very, very cold.
Yes.
Mars, let's start with that. How cold are we talking? Are we talking like
the average
during the night I have
temperature?
to... Yeah?
Yeah, it's about 81 degrees below 0 Fahrenheit. That's about 60 degrees below 0 Celsius.
It's negative 81?
Negative. Negative 81 as an average.
I got to tell you, Mars doesn't look that cold.
No.
I mean, I've seen postcards.
Red is not
Red means
indicative
hot,
of
right?
warmth.
Yeah, okay, wow. So we're not talking like I'm ever going to have the opportunity to walk around with the
So wait a
Mars
minute,
wind
you're
in my
telling
chest
me
hair.
like at the end of Total Recall when they fall outside, like before they choked from the lack of atmosphere, they should have frozen to death, right?
Yeah, and when they blew up, their
depends
parts should have frozen.
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Well, what's
Amy.
going to kill you first, the lack of atmospheric pressure or the temperature? It's only 9.7% of what the minimal survivability for human beings are, so I suppose
That's why
it's
their
what
eyes
kills you
bulged
first.
out.
That's what bulged out. Right. So we're always going to be talking spacesuits, and we're always going to be inside buildings, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's kinda what
Until
But, you know-
unless it gets terraformed, yes.
You know,
As it
last-
stands now, yep.
The last episode that you guys talked about was living in microgravity and the problems that presents. Well, the gravity on Mars, I thought it was actually a lot higher than this, but it's only 38% of that on Earth.
Yep.
That means...
Well, the planet is only about a third the size of Earth, so its mass is what mass of a planet is what affects the gravity.
Yeah, makes sense. So it determines.
So that means that all of those problems that we have with living in long-term microgravity would also be slightly lesser because we have at least 38% gravity, but would still over the long term be the similar problems that we'd be facing. You know, lack of muscle and blood circulation and
it'll decay a little bit slower, but you're still going to have to do all the exercising and all the kind of things that you do in space to make sure that when and if you return to Earth,
right, you're ready to walk actually around Earth and not.
Well, I know I'm kind of. I know I'm kind of going to be bouncing around the topics that we're going to be covering here, but one of the topics is how long do we stay there? Some plans have only talked about for as little as like 2 weeks.
Yeah,
which
it seems really
we decided
short.
was just a complete waste of time because it's like 2 years to get there. Why only spend 2 weeks? But I mean, if you're talking about spending a year plus there on Mars, that's would you be able to live on Earth?
Yeah, I mean, you would eventually be able... I mean, you'd come back. It's maybe 6 months to Mars, 18 to 22 months on the planet, then maybe 6 to 9 months back.
Okay.
And so,
plus rehabilitation.
Then, you would have to do rehab, but you'd eventually be able to, get around. You might not be running any marathons when you get back, but you would be eventually walking around.
Well, the reason I'm asking is because I'm wondering if there are any already studies being done about there, of a one-way trip, of just moving to Mars.
There are proponents that say just make it one way, not because of accident, but because that is the way you want it. That is, you plan it to be a one-way trip and you just stay there.
Yeah. That's kind of what I would imagine, too, or at least a long-term trip where the next crew that comes, you're sort of setting up or preparing for them, and when they get there, you go home. But
at the very least,
seems
a generational trip, right?
Yeah. I mean, I noticed in the notes you put together that they were saying some could even go as long as 22 months.
Yeah,
and
it's all based on orbital mechanics. So a lot of these missions, you do back-to-back, so then, one crew's arriving and one crew is kind of crossing paths depending on where the planets are in their orbit so that you're staying in space as little as possible.
Oh, yeah. And one of the issues when you're in space above Mars is the amount of radiation exposure, right?
Yeah. Well, even on the surface of Mars, I mean, in the Martian orbit, it's about 2 to 3 times what the space station sees, I believe.
We're looking at a graphic that you provided here that shows that essentially when you look at the ability that Mars has compared to the ability that Earth has to deflect radiation from the sun, the Earth has what seems to be like some sort of super shield that could withstand massive blasts, whereas Mars almost just has like a thin layer over it.
Well, Earth has, a molten core and the continental shift and a strong magnetic pole. Mars does not. It has localized magnetic areas, so you'll have, a localized area of north. So if you whip out your compass, it's not always going to be pointing north. You may have an area that, you'd say, I know that's actually, southwest, and that's
that's
the compass
weird.
is always going to point that way.
Compasses, even if they were properly calibrated to Mars, wouldn't actually work because it just doesn't have a strong enough magnetic pull.
Yeah, it only has you can see that image. It only has
like
localized
it's an alien
strength.
planet. That's
we're
weird.
looking at it here. So check this out.
It's not Earth.
It's got pools of spots on the planet, right? Is that kind of like how you describe it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of this is where magmatic activity. So volcanoes have poured out.
Magma.
Right.
Magma.
Yeah.
So you've had old places or where asteroids have hit and created enough heat, so you get a little bit of magma. It polarizes as it cools.
That's just weird to me that it's an actual okay, I know it's another planet.
Yeah.
Duh.
It is.
But sometimes when you learn about some of these scientific things about it, it's like you're...
Something you just take, you think
wait a minute, that's another planet.
Yeah.
That's a weird thing about that other planet.
So if we could be there for a while, what would be some of the things we'd look at doing? What would be our purpose? Would it be a scientific thing? I mean, what's sort of some of the first daily activities we might kind of take on and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, you'd have the basics of what you'd have to do. You'd have to you doing your exercise, keep fit, to, maintain your muscle mass and bone mass. You'd probably have, a lot of the plants have some sort of greenhouse. Most of them are inflatable. So you kind of bring it, inflate it, sort of grow some fresh food. So they're looking into can you make the Martian soil, by adding this or chemically altering it that way.
Oh, so you don't have to bring all of the soil because dirt weighs a lot.
Yeah, dirt weighs a lot.
That makes sense.
So can you bring stuff to do it? So you want to check your systems. You want to make sure that your habitat is running properly.
You're
probably
what?
having to write
Your
HAB.
what?
Yeah, we've been throwing around the space slang HAB.
Oh, okay.
Tonight, yeah.
Cool.
That's what the cool space people call it.
That's cool. I feel hip now. No, I know about HAB.
Now, see, but on this whole list of things that you sent us, the possible daily activities, I don't see near slave labor mining conditions listed anything, or running a multi-planetary corporation, or anything about enslaving mutants.
This kind of stuff, and doing,
Hollywood was just way off,
science and EVAs. It takes a lot of time, so I guess farther down the line, when you have people to do all this stuff for you.
Give those people some Cohagen.
Mars is poor audience are gonna have to listen to a few more Total Recall.
That's not the last. No.
Mars has included in the notes here some really cool artist renditions of what maybe a greenhouse might look like on Mars, and I kind of want to be there and do that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, that looks really great. So aside from maintaining my epic farm, which obviously is something,
and maintaining your epic shape.
Yeah, and exercise.
Remember, just getting to Mars makes you lose 62% of your weight. So that's the best diet ever, really.
That's true. It does make you drop down some weight. Yeah. So once I'm taking care of those kinds of things, what other kind of things might I expect to kind of be on my to-do list? My short list of activities, you might say. Short
list of activities. There's going to be, reports to write, and communications. You're downloading stuff from Earth. You're uploading stuff. Maybe they get letters from home or whatever.
What about tests? What about going out there and testing soil and stuff like that? Is that can man do that better than we can do now with robots? Because right now we can.
Oh yeah. Okay. Well, the robots. You'll maybe get the next generation of rover. They're thinking realistically is 100 feet in a day.
Whoa.
They're slow.
Yeah, that's actually a lot.
Well, you have to track it out. You have to send up the code. It's, go forward this many feet, go left that many feet, turn the wheels this way, go forward another so many feet. And with a human, you're like, hey, that's a neat rock, and you walk over.
I'm going to walk over there. Yeah.
Well, right, I was just looking at this.
Pick it up.
They have they've kind of been sort of engineering some different types of spacesuits for Mars, because you don't need quite the same level of suit, right? And so this is more like this guy can go around with his adorable little red wagon, and
I love the red wagon,
and go chip away at red rocks. Whereas a robot doesn't have that kind of flexibility, but this guy still seems like he's pretty constrained by that suit.
Yeah. Well, it's it's been a long time since we've been on the moon, and that was really low gravity. So they're just kind of moon bouncing around.
Yeah.
And using grippers to pick stuff up.
Remember that they need these big of suits. One of the primary concerns is that radiation, because Mars just can't protect them like another planetary body could.
Right.
So it's, figuring out ways to make, like the spacesuits that we have in, that we use on the space station, or we've been using on the shuttle, how to alter those so that you could kneel down and pick up a rock and be able to have the manual dexterity in your hands, because it's actually, you're working against a pressurized suit. Actually, that's another reason why these astronauts have to work out a lot. They actually have to have a lot of grip strength in their hands in order to handle these kind of tools.
Oh, sure,
to work against the suit. It takes a lot of effort to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Of course, that makes sense. All right. Now,
astronauts have strong hands. Who would have known?
Is there any other kind of activity?
Learn something new every day.
Because I'm really fascinated by the whole idea of, once I'm there, what am I going to do with myself?
Well, actually, I want to talk about this idea that, right now, most people, we discussed earlier that there is a camp of scientists that talk about it being a one-way trip, but most people want to come home. So now one of the main things that people that you mentioned in your doc here is the idea of an Earth return vehicle that would be launched ahead of an expedition, land on the planet, and there are actually ways that we've worked out that it could start fueling itself up. How does that work?
Yeah. What you do is a lot of these plans say you send an Earth return vehicle. So you send it, you land it on Mars where you want your astronauts to land, and you with 8 tons of hydrogen, then you can pump in the CO2, which is the Martian atmosphere. You pump in that. Oh. You have chemistry. You have
science,
and then you get 112 tons of fuel. Now, only 96 of that would be needed for an Earth return vehicle. It could be done in about 10 months, and all the extra, you could have fuel for your rovers.
Nice.
So now you have rovers to extend.
Which also means
now you can drive farther.
That also means that when you send the manned mission, you don't have to send as much fuel with it because it's being created there on the planet's surface. Yeah. That is awesome.
Yeah. Before you even launch a single human being, you know that it is completely fueled up and ready to return them home.
So whenever they need to get the F out of there, it's when we find those Mars aliens that live underneath the surface.
Yeah, or the Transformers that are hiding on,
Or the blue alien who's making a big silicon castle.
Mm-hmm.
That would also be something.
Or the Protheans that live at the South Pole.
Right. Good, you got that in there. All right, so we've talked a lot about some of the things we might do on the surface. I'm going through your notes here, Mars, and one of the things I think you should spend a little time talking about as we wrap up is some of the things we're doing on Earth now to sort of prepare for going there, because you have a connection to the Mars Society, and I know that's really what they're focused on.
Yes.
What's going on? So what are you guys doing?
Well, of course, NASA's doing its thing, and it's doing its research, but there's also, the Mars Society, which I'm involved with, which is a non-profit.
Well, it's your society, right?
It's
the Mars Society.
Mars and they have, these simulated habitats, one in the Utah desert, one in the Canadian Arctic, where they can send, these crews of scientists and students and journalists, and then go out there in these, simulated spacesuits, and you go out and you pretend like you're doing a mission. You actually do actual science. So we have students that come out with, they have rover ideas or ideas on how to do this or that, and it gives them a chance to be able to go out, test this kind of stuff, what kind of scientific equipment, get a better idea of what's really required, kind of inspire them, and give just, your regular everyday scientists a chance to go out and do this kind of stuff.
That's neat.
Now, have the Mars Society been involved at all with the, what was that new rover called, Curiosity? Like, have they been taken out to these Utah places and tested out some of the systems?
Drive them around and see how they do, kind of a thing?
NASA, there have been a couple of NASA crews that have gone out and tested various rovers or new spacesuits and things like that. Sometimes they're just brought out to the desert, but there have been crews come out to the Mars Society's habitats and tested.
That's awesome. And they find these areas.
I want to take an ATV to Mars.
I know, right? Even if it's fake Mars.
I know.
I'd be happy with going to fake Mars, J-Man. That'd be awesome.
No.
That's Big Boy Space Camp right there.
That is awesome.
Science.
That's fulfilling a dream right there.
Hey, since we mentioned it, do you have the info offhand on when that Curiosity rover is supposed to launch? I know it's soon-ish.
We have, I have links to that. Was just announced. That's like brand new stuff, right?
Yeah, that is brand new stuff.
But that's the next rover heading out to rove.
I'll see,
Yes.
Mars.
Boing Boing has
2016 was a plan to launch, but I could be wrong than that.
Oh, that's right around the corner.
Boing Boing has an amazing photo gallery of what this sucker looks like. So check this out in the show notes. This was announced. These were released yesterday, and these are some shots of this thing being assembled, I guess. And it seems to me much grander in scope than what we've seen up there on Mars so far.
That's actually quite impressive looking.
Isn't this thing a beast?
It's about the size of a Mini Cooper.
No kidding.
Yeah, the wheels are twice as big as anything we've sent. Twice as big as the wheels for the other rovers.
Maybe this sucker won't get stuck like the other ones keep getting. We can hope, right?
So
they've been up there for a while too.
That's extremely exciting.
They have a camera in the lab on Ustream so that you can always click over and watch.
No,
I actually watched it for a few hours several weeks ago when they first announced it. But it was just like one guy that would walk on and tanker and then walk away. And
yep,
sounds about right.
Yeah.
Well, that's neat. So we'll put a link to that the pictures of this rover, because boy, this is just super exciting. And oh my gosh, how great are these pictures to begin with?
Yeah,
these should be publicity shots. Well, maybe they are.
But they probably are. Actually, aren't we publicity? Isn't that technically why we have them?
That's a good point, J-Man. All right, Mars, is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up our discussion on living on Mars? Boy, that's kind of confusing.
Well, I'm curious. Let me just get your opinion. Do you think that with the science that we're working on or have right now, do you think we're ready to actually do long-term colonization
And
of
can
Mars?
I amend that? Honestly, Heather, how far out do you think it is until man steps foot? And you got to just, you can be optimistic or pessimistic, whatever you feel in your gut.
Well, there's kind of two prongs. There's two prongs to this. One, we are more ready now to launch to Mars than we were when Kennedy said, "Get us to the moon and back in this decade." We are
That's a good
far
comparison.
more ready to do that, to go to Mars now than we were to go to the moon then.
That's fair. That's
Now,
a good comparison.
Realistically speaking, you have to have a long-term vision and you have to have a nation behind you. I mean, there was the space race, so there was a lot of things politically going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're saying we need
we have a
Rusty's
president.
breathing down our neck right now in order to get us going? That's what we need? We need
Well, at the max, you have any one president in charge for 8 years. Can we get something done in that time? Otherwise, in the next 4 years, the plan, the space vision for space could change.
Yeah, exactly. The priorities
How much
change.
funding you get changes. All those kind of things can change. So it's a fluctuating.
Right.
To
kind
see
of a moving
realistically.
Target.
So are you saying maybe never?
Technically speaking, we're ready to go now. Financially speaking, it's...
Jeremy, want to go bye-bye?
Call up our buddy Bill.
Wants to go.
Mr.
Hey,
Gates.
I'm ready to go.
So it's seriously now just become not a matter of technology, it's a matter of funding.
And it sounds like maybe logistics, but getting the right people on board.
There's a certain amount of stuff that would have to come together, and say this needs to get done in this kind of a time frame, and we just need to do it. But I mean, we know how to create the fuel on Mars. We know how to do a lot of the stuff. We know how to get there, how to get back.
We think we have a pretty good handle on the challenges.
And
we have a pretty good idea on the challenges.
Pretty confident that the alien ruins under Olympus Mons could seriously help out terraforming efforts there once we arrive.
Nothing could go wrong with that, so that should be fine. So, all right. Well, I think that's
one more.
That's a good note to end it on right there, Mars Base. Thanks for coming on and getting our hopes up for a travel to Mars in the future. Yeah. Maybe one day it'll be Jupiter at Night live from Mars.
Jupiter on Mars.
Jupiter on. Well, we kind of are tonight.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, there you go. All right, Mars Base. Well, thanks for calling in, and thanks to everyone for tuning in. Now, Jupiter at Night is live Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. That means we've got one more live episode in us for this week. So tune in tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv.
I'll be here.
Yeah? Oh, well, how about that? And thanks to FreshBooks for sponsoring this episode of Jupiter at Night. Remember, you can use the little promo Jupiter when you tell them how you heard about us to get into that free birthday cake offer.
Cake.
I like cake. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to tonight's episode of Jupiter at Night, and we'll see you tomorrow night.